My name is Claire. I'm 34 years old, and 18 months ago, I accidentally destroyed two men's lives by simply telling the truth. I wasn't looking for trouble. I was just in love, or at least I thought I was. But one night I found a document on his kitchen counter, a marriage certificate. His name wasn't on it, but hers was, and I knew her name. Everyone did. She was his ex-wife. I stood there in his kitchen in my socks holding that paper with both hands. My coffee went cold. I didn't move for 10 minutes. Here's what made my stomach drop. The groom's name on that certificate? It was Marcus. His business partner. His best friend. The man he'd built everything with for 20 years. I had proof. Right there in my hands. And he had no idea. Before I tell you what actually happened, if you're new here, please like this video and subscribe. And drop a comment below. Where are you watching from? Now, let me take you back to when it all started. I met Daniel in the spring. He was steady, quiet, successful. The kind of man who remembered your coffee order after the first date and never once checked his phone at dinner. I liked that about him. I trusted that about him. He told me about Marcus early on. Almost proudly. We built everything together, he said. 20 years. That man is my brother. I remember nodding, thinking how rare. A friendship that survived 2 decades of business. Money. Pressure. All of it. Marcus came up constantly. In stories. In meetings Daniel mentioned. In the way Daniel's whole face relaxed when he talked about him. These two men were woven into each other's lives so tightly. I never thought to question it. But here's what I didn't know yet. That same man Daniel called his brother had a secret so close to home, it would make Daniel question every single memory he thought was real. I just didn't know I'd be the one to find it. And I definitely didn't know it would start with a wedding invitation that was never meant for me to see. Daniel didn't bring up his ex-wife often, but when he did, his jaw tightened. Just slightly. Enough for me to notice. Her name was Vanessa. They'd been married for 6 years. No kids. Ended badly, that much I gathered without asking too many questions. He said it once quietly over dinner. She just stopped showing up. In every way that mattered. Then he refilled his glass and changed the subject. I didn't push. New relationships have unspoken rules. You don't dig where it still bleeds. What I did know, Marcus had been there through all of it. The marriage. The slow collapse. The divorce. Daniel leaned on him through every stage. Marcus was the one who showed up with food when Daniel signed the papers. The one who kept the business running when Daniel could barely get out of bed. That loyalty, it meant everything to Daniel. Stay with me. Because that same loyalty, it had a completely different shape when seen from the other side. Vanessa had stayed in the city after the divorce. Daniel knew that. What he didn't know was exactly who she'd been spending her time with. And neither did I. Not yet. 6 months into dating Daniel, life felt normal. Good even. He was building something, a new office expansion, a contract that would triple their client base. He and Marcus were in back-to-back meetings every other day. Late nights. Early mornings. The business was their whole world. I started spending more time at his place. Cooking dinner while he finished calls. Learning his routines. His habits. The way he left his keys on the left side of the counter. The way Marcus's name appeared on his phone more than anyone else's. I never felt threatened by that. Not once. Marcus and I had even met briefly. A work dinner. He was charming. Polished. The kind of man who made eye contact when he spoke and laughed at exactly the right moments. Daniel watched them both interact and looked relieved. Like 2 important parts of his life had finally touched without breaking anything. Something was off. I just couldn't name it yet. Because looking back now, Marcus never once mentioned a wife. No ring. No photos on his phone that I saw. No casual mention of going home to someone. He was completely, deliberately invisible in his personal life. And at the time I didn't think twice about it. It was a Tuesday. Daniel was in the shower. His phone lit up on the counter. I wasn't snooping. I was just there. Standing close enough to see the screen without touching it. The name read Marcus. Nothing unusual. Except it was 11:47 at night. Daniel came out, saw the missed call, and something crossed his face. Not worry. Something quieter than that. He stepped into the hallway to call back. Pulled the door almost shut, but not completely. I heard fragments. Short sentences. Daniel's voice low and clipped. Then a long silence where he was just listening. Then, "Why are you telling me this now, Marcus?" He came back in 10 minutes later. Smiled. Said it was nothing. A contract issue. Something about a signature that needed fixing. I smiled back. But I'd heard his voice in that hallway. That wasn't a contract conversation. That was something personal. Something that made a grown man go completely still in the dark. He picked up the phone, then put it down, then picked it up again. I watched all of it from the doorway, and I filed it away, quietly, because something in my gut said, this wasn't the last strange phone call. I was right. After that phone call, I started paying attention differently. Not obsessively, just carefully. The way you do when something small keeps snagging at the back of your mind and you can't quite shake it loose. Marcus canceled 2 scheduled dinners in a row. Both times last minute. Both times the excuse came through Daniel, never directly from Marcus himself. Daniel shrugged it off. He's busy. Big things happening on his end. I nodded, but I noticed. Then Daniel mentioned offhand that Marcus had moved. New apartment. Different part of the city. Quieter area. More residential. I asked if he'd visited. Daniel paused just a half second too long before saying, not yet. 20 years of friendship. And he hadn't seen the new place. I didn't say anything, but I remembered it. Then came the moment that made everything click. I was clearing Daniel's kitchen table one evening and found a folded piece of paper tucked under his laptop. I almost left it. Almost. One search. That's all it took. Picked it up. Unfolded it slowly. It wasn't a contract. It wasn't a business document. It was a wedding venue confirmation. 2 names at the top. And one of them I already knew. I read the paper twice. Then a third time. The venue was booked for a date 8 months prior. Meaning this wasn't upcoming. This had already happened. Someone had already gotten married. And this confirmation had been sitting under Daniel's laptop like it meant nothing. The first name on the document, Marcus Allen. Clear as anything. The second name, I had to read it slowly, because my brain refused to process it on the first pass. Vanessa Holt. I knew that name. Daniel had said it exactly once over dinner. Quietly. With a tight jaw and a refilled glass. His ex-wife. I set the paper down. Picked up my phone. Opened a browser. Typed both names together. The results came back in seconds. A marriage announcement. A small local registry listing. A photo. Marcus in a dark suit, Vanessa in ivory, both smiling at a venue I now recognize from the confirmation in my hand. My coffee went cold. I didn't move. 8 months ago, while Daniel was expanding their business, trusting this man with everything, Marcus had quietly, privately, deliberately married his ex-wife. And the answer to why nobody told Daniel? It was worse than anything I'd imagined, because someone had known, and chosen silence. I needed to be sure. A venue confirmation and a registry listing wasn't enough. People make mistakes online. Names get mixed up. I told myself that. Repeatedly. So I dug deeper. Took me 40 minutes. 3 different searches. 2 social media profiles set to private. And 1 public county records database that listed marriages by surname. I typed Marcus Allen. Hit search. It loaded slowly. Then there it was. An official marriage record. Filed 8 months ago. Witnessed. Stamped. Legal. I screenshot it. Saved it twice. Then I sat on Daniel's kitchen floor. Not dramatically. I just needed to be lower. Needed the ground under me. Because this wasn't a rumor. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a legal document with 2 names on it that should never have been in the same sentence. The man Daniel called his brother. The man who showed up with food when Daniel signed his divorce papers. The man who kept the business alive while Daniel was falling apart. Had walked Vanessa down a different aisle entirely. He had dried Daniel's tears over a woman, then married her. Nobody saw that coming. Especially not me. And Daniel, the man sleeping peacefully in the next room, still had absolutely no idea. I stayed on that kitchen floor longer than I should have. Not crying. Just thinking. Running backwards through everything Daniel had ever told me about Marcus. Every story. Every timeline. Every moment that suddenly looked completely different from this angle. Daniel had introduced them. That hit me first. He had personally introduced Marcus to Vanessa at a company dinner, 7 years ago. Before the marriage. Before the divorce. He'd been proud of it. My 2 favorite people in one room, he'd said. His words. His memory. I thought about the divorce. How Marcus had been the one constant through it. Present. Available. Supportive. How Vanessa had apparently just disappeared from Daniel's life cleanly. No messy overlap. No mutual friends causing problems. Because Marcus managed it. He kept both sides separate. Organized. Contained. For how long though, that question sat heavy. Did this start before the divorce? During it? Was Marcus the reason it ended? Everything he built. suddenly felt like it belonged to someone else. 20 years of business, of trust, of shared decisions and shared risks. And underneath all of it, a secret that rewrote the entire story. I stood up, folded the paper, put it exactly where I found it. Then I walked back to the bedroom, lay down beside Daniel, and stared at the ceiling until morning. I waited 3 days before I said anything. Not because I was scared. Because I needed to be certain I wasn't going to hand Daniel a grenade without knowing exactly what he'd do with it. I watched him those 3 days. The way he laughed on calls with Marcus. The way he forwarded documents, approved decisions, trusted that man's signature on contracts worth hundreds of thousands. It made my jaw tight every single time. On the third night, I put the printed record on the table in front of him. No introduction. No softening. Just paper. Names. Date. He looked down. Read it. Looked up at me. Then back down. He didn't speak for a long time. Then he picked up his phone and called Marcus. Right there. No hesitation. I watched his hand completely steady. His voice when Marcus answered was quiet, controlled, terrifyingly calm. I need you here. Tonight. Marcus arrived 40 minutes later. Walked through the door and saw my face first. Then the paper on the table. And that right there was the moment it was truly over. Because Marcus didn't deny it. He sat down, looked directly at Daniel, and said 4 words that made everything worse. I wanted to tell you. Those 4 words hung in the room like smoke. Daniel didn't yell, didn't throw anything, didn't do any of the things you'd expect from a man whose world just collapsed in his own living room. He just went still. The kind of still that's louder than screaming. Marcus tried to explain. The timeline. How it started. How they'd kept it quiet to protect the business. To protect Daniel. Every sentence made it worse. Every justification landed like an insult. I sat in the corner, silent, because this wasn't my moment to speak. Daniel stood up, walked to his desk, pulled out a folder, and I realized then he'd had legal documents prepared. Already, meaning sometime in those 3 days I'd been deciding whether to tell him. He'd already made calls of his own. He slid the folder across the table to Marcus. Business dissolution papers. Marcus looked at them, then at Daniel. Then at me, like I was the one who'd done this to him. Nobody said anything for a long time. Then Marcus picked up a pen and signed. 20 years. Ended in 4 minutes. No argument. No negotiation. Because some betrayals don't leave room for conversation. The business was finished. But the fallout had barely started. Marcus left that night without another word. Daniel sat at his desk for a long time after the door closed. I didn't try to fill the silence. Some silences need to finish on their own. The next morning he was up before 6. Showered. Dressed. On the phone with his lawyer by 7. I heard him from the kitchen, calm, precise, methodical. Listing assets. Naming accounts. Asking questions about intellectual property and client contracts and non-compete clauses. This wasn't a broken man. This was a man who had decided something. Within a week he'd contacted every major client personally. Didn't badmouth Marcus. Didn't explain the personal details. Just introduced himself as the sole continuing partner and offered contract reviews across the board. Every single client stayed. That surprised me. It shouldn't have because Daniel had always been the engine. Marcus had been the face. Turns out, clients follow results, not charm. He moved fast, quietly, with a focus that was almost unsettling to watch. But at night it was different. I catch him sometimes just sitting, phone face down. I somewhere else entirely. He never talked about Vanessa. Not once. And that silence told me more than any conversation could. Because he wasn't grieving the marriage anymore. He was grieving the friendship. 3 months after Marcus signed those papers, Daniel got a letter. Not an email. A handwritten letter. Sealed envelope. His name on the front in handwriting he recognized immediately. It was from Vanessa. He read it alone. I didn't ask what it said. But he came and found me afterwards and sat down across from me at the kitchen table. And for the first time since all of this started, his eyes were wet. She hadn't written to apologize. She'd written to explain. There's a difference. Apparently Marcus had gone to her first. Years before they were divorced. Daniel had never known. She said she'd ended the marriage specifically to stop something she wasn't proud of. Tried to create distance. It hadn't worked. She wanted Daniel to know it wasn't Marcus who pursued her. That landed differently than anything else in this entire story. Daniel folded the letter, placed it flat on the table, sat quietly for a moment. Then he looked at me and said, I built 20 years with the wrong person. He wasn't angry when he said it. That was the part that stayed with me. Nobody won here. Nobody walked away clean. And the one person nobody expected to show integrity turned out to be the one who tried to stop it all along.